Welcome everyone to the American Swiss Foundation event on the future of nutrition. My name is Steven Hoch, and I'm honored to serve as the Chairman Emeritus of the Foundation. We have a tight program this morning, so after a few opening remarks, I'm going to hand it off to Markus Diethelm, who will make the formal introduction, and then Bob Giuffra will conduct the interview. We are thrilled that we have over 130 registrants today. Of them, 87 are alumni of our Young Leaders Conference, and of those 87, 8 of them are working at Nestle. We welcome many distinguished guests today, but I particularly want to note Paul Bulke, Chairman of Nestle, who has just finished running Nestle's annual general meeting a little while ago today. Many of you will remember that Paul was our guest of honor a few years ago at the big gala event in New York. And he's been a long-term supporter of our foundation and our Young Leaders Conference. In fact, Nestle has hosted the conference 4 times in the last couple of decades. So welcome, Paul, and thank you, Nestle. So turning to our guest speaker today, we welcome Mark Schneider and are honored to have him with us again on the day of their AGM. Mark and I first met in early 2016. We had a secret rendezvous at our house in Boston, and during an animated conversation over several hours, Mark really convinced me that he just might be the outsider who could come in and lead Nestle through a transformative phase. We spoke about the importance of balancing. On the one hand, a great respect for Nestle's success and 150 years of corporate culture. And on the other hand, the need to make some tough decisions about a vast global portfolio. Indeed, 5 years in, Mark has been able to retain most of the senior executives and at the same time has made some key changes in the makeup of Nestle's portfolio. So with that, let me just offer a few personal observations about Mark. He was born in Germany, but he became an American. He loves the US and he reminisces about summers spent in New England. After our dinner in Boston, I assumed that I would find a big black limo idling in my driveway, but there was none. And so I ordered up an Uber, and Mark was perfectly content to take a more modest means of transportation and a more sustainable one back to his hotel. One thing I constantly marvel at with Mark is the speed with which he answers emails. And he must be one of the busiest people on the planet. And yet he often responds within just a few hours. So I'm hoping, Bob, that you'll be able to find out what Mark's secret is in being able to do that and share it with the rest of us today. Finally, on the family side, Mark has an accomplished wife and an adorable daughter named Sophia. And despite the weight on his shoulders, when you see him at home with them, he really has the warmth and attentiveness of any father you can imagine with a young family. So with those brief insights, let me hand it over to Markus to lead us forward in the presentation today. Markus?
Steven, thank you very much. I couldn't think of a better introduction, and I'm going to give you more of the facts, but it is very nice to see the warm sides of people, where they take the energy from and who they are. So as you mentioned, Mark joined Nestle in 2017 and became the first outsider to run the largest food and beverage company in the world since 1922. Despite being headquartered in Switzerland with a dual location, Nestle is a truly global company. As a result, we're all familiar with its products and brands, including, of course, Swiss classics as Maggi and the global staples like Nespresso. In 2020, Nestle had sales of over 84 billion, selling products in 186 countries and employing 273,000 people worldwide, of which 50,000 are in the United States and 8,500 in Switzerland. It's quite telling that Mark joined the company as CEO after having served as a CEO of the major German healthcare company Fresenius Group over a decade. And since then, he has encouraged the company to shift away from its sugary snacks towards healthier and higher margin products and e-commerce. And in one of the interviews I read that we're talking about a pretty significant megatrend. I have two wonderful daughters, both living in Los Angeles, only eating vegan food. They're extremely focused on health and well-being. And in some ways, this is a return to the roots, as Nestle's founder, Henri Nestle, was actually a pharmacist who sought to reduce child mortality with the world's first infant food. So the shift has been driven by a continued focus on fast innovation, including on products contributing to health and the immune system, ever so important in the current time of the pandemic, vegetarian and plant-based products, as well as contributing to nutritional research through Nestle Health Service. And we're going to be very curious, and Bob, I'm sure we'll ask you some questions about the new other mega trend to deliver food to people's bodies' individualized needs. I think coming out of the pandemic, hopefully soon, our focus will shift again to the long-term challenges. And these are on top of Mark's mind, as he writes frequently on climate change, hence no idling limo, and sustainability. And Nestle takes sustainability very seriously and has presented a roadmap to achieve zero emission by 2050, but many more tangible goals much earlier. And by that, I also want to take the opportunity to thank Steven during his tenure on the board, that he was also leading these efforts and supporting it. So we are extremely honored to have you with us, Mark. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I'm delighted to pass the word to my good friend and now, co-chair of the American Swiss Foundation. I cannot tell you how happy I am to contribute together with my friend Bob to further prospering the organization and keeping the ties between America and Switzerland. Over to you, Bob. Thank you very much.
Markus, thank you so much, and it's a privilege to work with you every day to make the American Swiss Foundation stronger. Mark, it's an honor to be with you here today, and let me ask a few questions. Nestle's beginnings date back to 1866, which is quite an incredible history, when an American, George Page, brought condensed milk technology to Switzerland. And it's worth noting that Page was the great-great-grandfather of our own Steven Hoch. As Markus said, the history of Nestle has been one of innovation. And over the past few years, you have been investing in health science and plant-based foods, and you've sold Butterfingers and one of my favorites, Baby Ruth, and other candy companies. Can you tell us what you are doing in the health science business to innovate?
Bob, thank you. And first of all, let me thank the American Swiss Foundation for having me on this program. And Steven and Markus, thank you very much for the extremely kind introduction. You were absolutely right when you talked about the Nestle company and its origins. There's a little known fact here that today's Nestle as we know it is the result of a 1905 merger of equals between the Nestle company that started infant nutrition products and was founded by Henri Nestle, and then the Anglo-Swiss Condensed Milk Company that was founded by the Page brothers, who came to Switzerland after the Civil War and basically exploited the condensed milk patents and brought that technology, which was invented in the United States, to Europe. And of course, condensed milk at the time when refrigeration was not ubiquitous as today really had major benefits, and also, just like infant nutrition, saved many lives. So these two companies got together in 1905, and few people remember today that until 1977, the company was called, I'm reading here, Nestle and Anglo-Swiss Condensed Milk Company. And only then did we switch our name formally to Nestle S.A, which is then the shorter name that's kind of a household name today. So very interesting American-Swiss roots, and I think it explains why we're so interested in any matters that connect Switzerland and the United States of America. In terms of the focus on nutrition, you see from the origin of the company, it's very important to me. This is not something that started with me joining. This is something the company has been patiently working at for decades. Our nutrition, health, and wellness strategy goes back over 20 years. Very patiently, we've been taking salt and sugar and saturated fat out of our mainstream food and beverage products. And also in a very patient manner, we've been building up what we call the Nestle Health Science business. So this is medical nutrition, vitamins, minerals, and supplements, and also specialty products for people that have special metabolic needs or suffer from food allergies. And from next to nothing, in a very patient way, this business has been now scaled up over more than 20 years to business with a run rate of about 4 billion Swiss francs. And I think that is something, to me, that's a hallmark of Nestle, sort of seeing trends early and then very patiently over time pursuing them until they're major businesses. And it's been rewarding for the consumers we serve, but also rewarding to us.
Can you tell us a little bit about Nestle's plant-based meat alternatives business? That's a question from Markus's daughters.
Yeah, and look, that's a product range I'm also very excited about, and one that, of course, has received a lot of media attention the last few years. We've been making specialty products for the vegan and vegetarian community for many years, but it's been only the last 3 or 4 years that we really focused on what we call plant-based meat analogs. So, for example, a burger patty or chicken products that really come very close to the original, offer superior nutritionals, and are totally plant-based. And the benefits are twofold. We call it better for you, better for the planet. Better for you because you're basically getting the same protein content, but with less saturated fat and less calorie count. And better for the planet because these products, as you make them, you emit so much less in terms of greenhouse gases, gas emissions. So depending on what product we're talking about, it's 75–80% less for the same product. And it's kind of intuitive, compared to growing crops to feed an animal to then feed man. It's got to be so much more efficient to grow crops to feed man right away. And I think that major trend, because of the health benefits and the environmental benefits, has a lot of runway.
How do you decide as the CEO which products to keep and which products to expand into? It must be an important part of your job, I would imagine.
Well, the good news is I'm not alone. And so, I mean, this is a very decentralized company with lots of good, empowered people and decentralized decision making. As you know, Nestle has over 2,000 brands worldwide, more than 25,000 SKUs or individual products that we sell. And so if it was just me or a small group of people, we would slow things down. In fact, the strength of Nestle is that in addition to a few strong global brands, like we have about 35 what we call billionaire brands where there's more than $1 billion of sales per annum. We also have literally hundreds of regional or local brands that mean a lot to the regional or local consumers we're serving. But of course, there the decision making has to be all local. And so what you have to do is articulate principles, be sure that you don't have senseless SKU proliferation, that you have a steady stream of new products, which is an important measure for us when it comes to innovation. But with the exception of some really high profile, significant portfolio changes, frankly, if I was trying to micromanage all of these portfolio and SKU changes, I would slow things down.
You've said that the future of nutrition will involve extreme personalization. Can you tell us a little bit about how this extreme personalization will change our diets and make us healthier?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to this notion when you talk about food saying this is good or this is healthy. And I think what we're learning more and more is that this is a very individual assessment and not something that, has general meaning. So, for example, a beef intake for many children is very important when it comes to fighting iron deficiency and supporting brain development. Beef intake when you have high cholesterol and are overweight is probably not a good idea. And even beyond that, it's becoming clearer and clearer that your specific needs for the 3 macronutrients and then also the 30 to 40 micronutrients that humans need varies a lot from person to person. It varies by day. It varies by whether you're hot or cold, whether you just came back from a workout or not, whether you're fighting an infection. And so I think what we're learning is that between people and then for the same person over time, your needs vary a lot. And I think over time, what we're seeing is more and more technology that will help us in a non-invasive way to assess what is it that you need right now. And then we can guide your food choices in a much better way.
Do you think going forward that wearable technology will permit personalized diets and that Nestle will be part of that process?
I do believe that on a 10, 15-year time horizon, that is absolutely going to be a reality. So wearable devices are the key to that. Obviously, you can't expect anyone to take a blood sample every few hours to see what the optimal nutrition is. But if you have a wearable device that in a non-invasive way tells you the key blood parameters, then yes, that's the holy grail. That'll change everything. And we're not there yet, but I believe over 5, 10, 15-year time horizon, we're going to be there. We're working with all the main wearable manufacturers and obviously scan the horizon for any new technology that's out there. It's going to come.
Can you tell us how this focus on extreme personalization and nutrition will impact the overall Nestle product mix, sort of what you have in the planning stages now that may affect everyone on this Zoom call?
Yeah, so to see how personalization impacts the business, it's a good idea to take a look at some of the personalized products we're selling today. So for example, we have a UK-based pet food company called Tails.com, where on your smartphone, you enter the key facts about your dog, like the breed, the weight, age, special medical conditions, the amount of movement the dog has. And then we mix for you out of 15 different ingredients exactly what's right for this pet. And then you enter a monthly subscription, we ship it to your home. There's even the name of the dog, on the back, and which is important if you have more than one dog. So it shows you that these models tend to be direct-to-consumer models. And we not only have that for pets, we also have it in the vitamins, minerals, and supplements space. Some of you may be familiar with a business called Persona, based on the West Coast in the US, where it's essentially the same process for the vitamins, minerals, and supplements that are right for you, because not everyone's vitamins needs are the same. And so most of these models will be direct to consumer, and we see that over time, while still a lot of basic products will be, of course, handled through normal online platforms and normal retail shelves, direct to consumer in a personalized world will become more important.
How do you manage a company with more than 300,000 employees?
Well, I think the starting point is you manage it with humility, both on the inside of the company and the outside. I think in this day and age, the idea of a large company that is a powerful player in this industry is one that requires a lot of humility so that it doesn't create aversion in the public world. And inside the company, look, with the new generation of talent coming in, no one wants an old style overbearing boss anymore. It's very important to sort of rope everyone in and get the best of them, get their motivation up, and be positive and encouraging in the way we lead. And so, as strange as it may seem, that's always the first word that comes to my mind when it comes to leading a business like this. This is what it takes. And then, as I mentioned before, decentralization is the name of the game, especially in the food and beverage industry that is so regional and local. There was a time 10, 15 years ago when even in our industry, globalization was all the rage, and some of our peers actually were ever more centralizing their decision making. I think Nestle fared really well in resisting that trend. Obviously, behind the scenes, where you have some efficiencies, you try to centralize, but the face to the consumer, the face to the customer, the face to your local environment, that has to be local. and we stayed that way. And I think now most of our peers are coming back to where we are.
What sort of concerns keep you up at night as the CEO? What do you worry about in terms of things that could go wrong or things that maybe you're focused on? Maybe you sleep well at night.
Yeah, look, I can tell you from personal experience and most of the CEO peers I know that sleep is not the the greatest feature of the CEO lifestyle. But I think the pandemic has taught us one thing, and that is expect the unexpected. And if we'd had this conversation 2 years ago, no one would have had a global pandemic at the top of their worry list. And hence, it was the one event that really shaped our lives in 2020 and 21, and in some countries it'll go beyond that. And what I mean with this is, rather than being ever more precise about what might be the next problem, the conclusion that we all took from this major pandemic is the value of resilience. You will never be able to guess what the next global crisis is going to be. But a resilient supply chain, a resilient balance sheet, a resilient company setup is probably in a better shape to weather the next crisis than one that is highly exposed and highly specialized. If you were a highly levered business, your chances of making it through the world financial crisis in 2008, 2009 were probably less than with a conservative balance sheet. If you had highly exposed global supply chains, single source, lots of global transshipment, your chances of making it through 2020 and 2021 were probably lesser than with a company that has a plan B, C, and D when it comes to key supplies, and that has shorter, more localized supply chains. So resilience, even though sometimes it comes at the cost of efficiency, I think there's a value to that. And I think after this crisis, a lot more people will take a look at their business model and see how they can make it more resilient going forward.
As a result of the pandemic, more people are obviously working from home, drinking coffee at home, cooking at home. How has Nestle adopted to these changes in consumer behavior, and how will Nestle change as a company post-pandemic?
Yeah, so obviously that was the one big shift that happened with these lockdowns. We saw in-home demand skyrocketing, but of course anything that we sell outside of the home, and we do have a fairly sizable business we call Nestle Professional that caters to canteens, restaurants, bars, and office locations. That, of course, had strongly negative growth rates starting from last February, last March. So that's still the same trend. What we're seeing is a blurring between traditional out-of-home channels and in-home. So when you order, for example, a freshly cooked meal in-home, traditionally this would have been an out-of-home channel, but you consume it inside your own home. It's a ready-made meal. We have acquired some businesses in that space. In the United States, for example, we acquired Freshly, which sells subscriptions for meals that are being shipped to home. But we're also trying to get more into business with the likes of dark kitchens and delivery services, so that our products are being part of what is being shipped to the home.
The pandemic has obviously accelerated trends toward greater online purchasing, and I've noticed that Nestle's e-commerce sales are now over 10% of your sales. You've been acquiring e-commerce companies. Do you think that in 10 years the supermarket or the shop will be obsolete and we'll just order our food, entirely online?
Online is here to stay, and you're absolutely right. I think this pandemic was probably the coming of age of online and digital in food and beverage, because traditionally food and beverage was kind of a slow adopter when it comes to digital. One of the frequent quips we're using inside the company is that consumers preferred to pick their bananas in person rather than just having them delivered to their home. But of course, under the influence of the pandemic, they had to shift to digital purchasing habits, and they've discovered the convenience associated with this. And so it's very likely that that online purchasing habit is going to continue after the pandemic and grow. It won't turn entirely online. I think the future is a reality that we talked about for a long time, which we call anytime, anywhere. So if you want to buy something online, you can do that, and there's going to be rapid delivery services in most metro areas that can do that. If you want to order something and pick it up yourself, you can also do that. Or if you want to get inspired, you go to a store and look at the shelf and you shop that way. But remember how much of a progress that is to the reality, especially here in Switzerland from 30, 35 years ago, where if you found out after 6:30 at night or on a Saturday afternoon that you forgot to buy something, you were pretty much out of luck, okay? And then the only way to get something would be at a gas station or a railway station shop. So this anytime, anywhere world where literally anytime of the day you can get access to a product through a number of channels, I think that is major progress, and certainly when it comes to work-life balance, makes everyone's life so much easier.
Nestle has a long history as a socially conscious company, and in 2019, Nestle announced its goal to be carbon neutral by 2050. How does Nestle hope to achieve that goal?
Yeah, so this is a major undertaking, and as you know, in 2019, we signed up to the 1.5 degree pledge, the science-based targets, and the essential features of that is carbon neutrality by 2050, but then also a meaningful progress in the first decade, so a 20% reduction by 2025 and a 50% reduction by 2030. And it takes that because, look, these days, when you have a 30-year commitment, what's the credibility here unless you have some real tough milestones in between that the public can measure us on? And the way we achieve this is in our type of business by working with our agricultural supply chain. Our commitment is a so-called Scope 3 commitment, so it goes all the way back to the commodities that we use in our products, and that's where 95% of our greenhouse gas emissions sit. So everything that goes on inside our buildings and factories and even our in-house distribution logistics is only about 5% of our greenhouse gas emissions. But then the greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with producing our various agricultural commodities, this is where we have to improve. And in many cases, that means working with literally hundreds and thousands of farmers around the globe to improve their agricultural practices, share technology, share best practice, convince them that this is a better way to do business. In some cases, also just paying a premium for that conversion. And so it's very detailed work by commodity, by location, that we're embarking on. Of course, the starting point, even if it's only the 5% of the total, the starting point is what we do in-house. So this is where we'll be moving much, much faster, because we wouldn't want to turn to these people and ask them to improve all of that without having done our own homework.
As the CEO of the world's most important food company, what do you see as some of the bigger risks facing the world economy over the next several years?
It's a very important question, and I think where we are in the world economy is at a kind of a crossroads for the next few years, where it's uncertain whether we'll be staying with this global multilateral trading system that has given us so many efficiencies over the past few decades, or whether we're going to be ending up with a more bilateral system between various geopolitical players that facilitate trade between each other, but make it harder to the other side. And the outcome is uncertain. We're certainly, when it comes to us as a company, given that we are in 187 markets around the world, and we're very much built on the notion of free trade and free movement of people and skills and talents. We're very much beholden to this multilateral world and a rule-based system governed by the World Trade Organization. But again, where it'll go, we'll find out. And I hope the public understands that the last few decades, we've been all significant beneficiaries from this multilateral trade system. Very often when people talk about the low inflation rate in the 1990s, And they credit Paul Bulke in the early 80s with killing inflation, and this is why we had low inflation in the 90s. No, this is not why we had low inflation in the 90s. We had low inflation in the 90s because there was essentially 2 billion people from Eastern Europe, Russia, and China entering an open world trade system and giving us so much more choice when it comes to sourcing and bringing costs down. And this is what led to wealth increases and benefits for everyone. And so this is what open trade has done. And I hope that people remember that as they sort of decide the course for the future.
How do you think, this will be the 2 more questions and we're done. How do you expect technology will change Nestle over the next 50 years?
Look, you're seeing the same trends at work already. I mean, just the very fact we're having this conference here between a number of participants between Switzerland and the United States. I mean, more and more can be done real time, anytime, anywhere. And that applies to the consumer side, as we discussed a minute ago. It also applies to the future of work, where if need be, you can get on a video conference from your smartphone, you know, while you're on a hike. And so clearly, there is a more flexible digital world for us. There is a part of our work that will stay very physical, especially in food and beverage. So the making of our products and the distribution of these products, of course, is a very physical endeavor, and that won't change. But on the marketing side, on the product development side, there's a lot more globally possible that can be done real time. And we're not at the end of that. It'll go on from here.
And the last question, this is Stephen's question. How are you able to respond to so many emails so quickly and run this big company?
I spend a lot of time looking at screens. And look, I mean, I'm one of the things when I think back to my undergraduate years at the University of St. Gallen here in Switzerland, as much as I appreciate that education, learned a lot. The thing I remember the most is taking a typing course at the local Mikros Clubschule. And frankly, you know, after that, life was different, okay? Because once you type yourself and at a reasonably fast clip, I mean, your rate of communicating this way goes up significantly.
Well, we really appreciate you spending the time with us. The American Swiss Foundation loves Nestle. You've been a very important part of our process. You are someone with American and Swiss roots, and the real purpose of our organization is to build those bridges between 2 of the most important countries in the world. And so thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much, Bob. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.